Hello, and welcome to Americana X Newswatch. I'm Greg D. This is Newswatch for August 26, 2020. Today on the Newswatch, last week's DNC Ultra Cringefest. Hard to watch and hard to stomach. Post office scandal, which is not really a scandal. Another nothing burger to fill the news cycle, to preoccupy as many people as possible with this over here so they're not actually paying attention to what's really going on. Rioting as a knee-jerk reaction to anything the police do that is caught on camera. This is Newswatch, your break in your week from all the liberal propaganda you're sold in the mainstream news cycle. A news commentary show that brings a historical perspective to your weekly news. This show is for common sense conservatives that care about what's going on behind the sensationalized headlines. If you are enjoying this content, we would appreciate it if you like, comment, and subscribe. We need more creators like this. We need more channels like this. We need more shows like this to continue to fight in the culture war that is raging in America today. First story. The DNC, the Democrat National Convention last week. I must admit, I did not watch the whole entire thing because it was just too cringeworthy. It was just too difficult to invest. It was too hard to stomach. Basically, I'm going to sum up all the footage that I watched of the thing in one sentence. It was angry, cynical, negative, power-hungry people creating their own view of reality out of whole cloth and then hoping that if they repeat those stories and those lies enough, then they'll get all of the average normies in America to buy in on what they're selling and hopefully they'll vote for them. It's really quite sad. The DNC was cynical and negative, total alternative reality. Every single speaker that they put up, whether it was celebrity, politician, they're kind of bouncing back and forth between those, everything they were saying was a lie. It was really crazy to watch. I'm like, am I the only... Are we all taking crazy pills right now? Democrats are completely invested in the alternative reality that they are creating. Their entire convention was politician after celebrity spewing things that were not factual. Mostly all just emotional, touchy-feely moralizing with almost no talk of policy. It's weird to watch 6 hours or so of footage or whatever it was, 9 hours, I don't even know how long it was, with almost no talk of policy. I think the only time that they actually mentioned policy is when Joe Biden was talking about wearing masks. Really sad. If the Democrats didn't have Donald Trump to talk about, their conference would have been, I predict, about 20 minutes long. If the liberal Democrats did not have this sort of rallying point of Donald Trump to unify against, I think their whole party would just completely fracture and just completely fall apart, which I'm actually making that prediction now. When Donald Trump wins in November, I think that the liberal party is going to continue to fall apart more and more. There was this comment that I saw on YouTube that I felt really just summed up the sentiment pretty nicely. This person wrote, in conclusion, DNC, Trump is bad. RNC, America is great. And that, I think, really does highlight the difference between the two parties, the DNC versus the RNC. Right now, we're in the middle of the RNC. It really is focusing on what is great in America and what is positive. I'll probably do more coverage on that on Friday. Post office scandal. Ooh, there's another scandal for us all to get excited about in the news cycle. Not a real scandal. Not even a real thing. Just another shiny bouncing ball to stir up the normies. Let me ask you, are you buying this? the whole thing about the post office. Are you buying it? I don't know. Leave a comment in the section if you think this is real. It just comes off so prefabricated. It really does feel like another shiny bouncing ball for us all to chase after. Here, look over here. Look over here. You know, I don't know what movie that's from. I feel like, whippoorwill, whippoorwill. Look over here. Look over here. That's what it feels like to me. Just another goofy thing that's not real news, not a real event, just something to get us all whipped up into an emotional frenzy. Rioting, blamed on police brutality. Again, rioting is now becoming a knee-jerk reaction to any police officer caught doing anything on camera. And the news cycle falls into it. All of our major media outlets fall into this so simply, so easily. They just all, as soon as there's something that's caught on camera and it's leaked through the social media, all the mainstream media jumps on and starts writing headlines and starts writing stories. It is a form of madness. And this time, it's in Kenosha, Wisconsin. The individual resisting arrest, in this case, is Jacob Blake. Jacob Blake is shot after a long confrontation with the police. And it's even clear in the video footage that they're spreading all around the internet that he's running from the police. He's actively resisting arrest. I don't know how anyone can watch that and say, okay, now it's another reason for us to create this big narrative that police are so bad. There's a guy, Sheriff David Clark. He was interviewed and he said something that I felt was really important for all of us to be reminded of in that interview. He said, if you are confronted with a police officer, if you're in a situation where you have to deal with a police officer, in that moment, the police officer represents the law. They are law enforcement. So the best possible thing you can do as a citizen is to comply with what they say, is to, whatever they tell you, whatever orders they give, just be compliant. If you can do that, if you can just handle putting down your ego for a moment, putting down whatever your agenda was, and just comply with them, you'll probably be able to avoid lethal force. At any rate, I did find a news article that I feel like is a good example of what the media likes to do with this kind of story. You know, we see this again and again, and there's just multiple newspapers, news outlets that turn the very hint of something that they can politicize or they can push their narrative through. The very hint of it, they'll just run with it. And here is a perfect example. This is a story that was posted on New York Times right after the Jacob Blake shooting took place. Headline reads, after Jacob Blake shooting, scrutiny of Kenosha police intensifies. Protests following the shooting of Mr. Blake, a black man, by a white police officer. You know, this is the narrative. This is the whole thing. It doesn't matter what had happened there, really. It doesn't matter about doing a further investigation before we start reporting and start creating the storyline. It's just, here's the storyline we want to push. Here's a headline. You don't even have to read the story. It's all in the headline. After Jacob Blake shooting, scrutiny of Kenosha police. And it's a white police officer and a black person that's being shot by the police officer. It really doesn't matter ultimately when it comes to the police enforcing law enforcement, and the individual. The best thing the individual can do is comply with what the police officer asks. When there's any kind, doesn't matter what race the person is, your best option is to comply with what the police officer's asking you to do. All right, I think we've spent enough time on that. So with all of this basically fake stories that are being drummed up, things being blown out of proportion before the facts are all in on something, whether it's a post office story or whether it's this person here, Jacob Blake, there really needs to be a pause put in on all of these things. We need to take a moment, just take a beat, investigate what really happened before we just rush to conclusion. And now, all of a sudden, the whole entire police department of a city is under scrutiny. And now we have rioting in the streets, and we have protests everywhere you look because there was this one thing that happened, and we jump to a conclusion before we even know what the end result of it is. I honestly believe when Donald Trump wins his second term in a landslide coming up in November, I think we're going to be set up. We are going to have to set up agencies to help all the mentally disturbed Democrats work through all this. Because all of this kind of programming and brainwashing that's been going on for 20 plus years here in America, it's reaching just a boiling point, like a red line point where these people are going to need actual help. I'm saying that somewhat facetiously, sort of tongue in cheek, but I wonder if there's some actual truth in that these people are going to need like psychologists to help them work through all of the Trump derangement syndrome and everything that's kind of like boiling up, that's continuing to build story after story that ends up being a nothing burger or something that's blown out of proportion, that's not a real story. It's just not being, it's not the story that's being framed in the mainstream media. At any rate, I am still optimistic about where everything is going. And, if you're watching the RNC this week, that is at least a bright light of shining hope that's out there right now that we can say, okay, if you even look at the ratings from last week's DNC to this week's RNC, I think the viewership on the RNC is something like 6 times as many viewers watching the RNC that watch the DNC. I know there's a lot of polling going on out there right now, and they're showing that it's much closer between Biden and Trump. But I don't know. I always feel like when I'm being told about these polls, that's very suspect. But if you just kind of look at some simple indicators, like there's just generally more interest in the RNC approach, focusing more on positivity and America being great versus negativity and how bad America is and how awful and how many bad traits are in America, and we have to dismantle the whole thing. I think that the great thing that we're seeing here is that there is a lot more interest going into this election. I mean, if you've got 6 times as many just average television viewers out there in America or on the internet, wherever they're watching this, there 6 times as many viewers watching the RNC versus the DNC. I think this is a really positive indicator for those people that are promoters of Make America Great, the conservative solutions. This is a really good sign. At any rate, this has been another episode of Americana X Newswatch. If you haven't yet, like, comment, subscribe. I still haven't gotten my feed working for bringing all of the chats into one place. That's something I'm working on right now. So in the future, we'll be able to actually do live chat while we're going through the feed. At any rate, we'll see you on Friday.